Hello, hello, Dr. Marie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am fantastic. And welcome everyone to the Human Energy Show. This is your host, Yvonne Durasso, and my wonderful co-host, Dr. Marie Celestine. How's the weather in Boston today?
Oh, the weather. Same. I'm sure it's the same as yours, but
No,
it's double digits, okay? Double. It's not two, three, four. So
it's lovely here. It's
it's
lovely.
describe lovely to me. It's winter everywhere. So
No.
what number are we talking about?
Right. Today, we're in the high 40s today.
That sounds tropical in comparison to 20 something.
That's right. That's why I said it's
Okay.
lovely here.
It's tropical.
Yeah. And pretty soon I'm probably gonna sell pieces of the weather uh
Yeah.
to Massachusetts, New York,
You're gonna
all of
bottle it.
them. Yes.
Alaska,
Yeah,
all those
Alaska. Oh my
places.
goodness.
Vermont.
Yes.
Don't forget Vermont.
Vermont,
We need
yes.
it. Yeah.
Because it's so lovely here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So uh and I was talking to somebody earlier, you know what? We are so lucky here. We have a winter, but it's only for just a couple of months.
You've adjusted. You don't even have palm trees, so I don't know this tropical situation.
I don't know. Yeah, there's a
So
lot of things that we do not have.
yeah, so you all adjust, but I'm sure amazing community, great people. The
Hmm.
tourist department will be happy to have an ambassador like you.
Yes, yes. But I know for sure we're gonna have a great story today.
Yes. Oh my God, it gets better each one. Those stories are amazing, amazing.
Yes, yes. So it's a story that is suspenseful and heartwarming.
Hmm. I feel like it was a mystery movie. I was just like, okay, the plot ticking. It's definitely a mystery to figure out how is this gonna end. Are we gonna get all the answers right? It's that puzzle we're talking about, getting all the pieces and make it work.
Yes, yes. So hopefully we're gonna be able to put all the pieces together and create a nice and beautiful puzzle.
Well, we have the source. The main character is here.
Absolutely. And speaking of the main character,
Yeah.
my next guest was 67 years old in 2017 and vaguely remembered being told as a child that he was adopted, but no details were given. In his new memoir, the gift best, that's the name of the memoir, the gift best given,
Mhm.
is a story of adoption, search, discovery, and reunion. As he approached the age of 70 to learn the identity of the woman who placed him for adoption at the time of his birth. He discovered that she'd been a celebrity ice skater in the glamorous ice show in the 1940s and 1950s. And the book that he wrote, The Gift Best Given, the book traces uh, her travels from when she left home at 17 in 1942 to pursue her dreams to her secretive return in
Mm.
1947, unexpectedly pregnant.
It's always a twist.
Yes, with only her eldest sister and her sister's husband aware. She managed his birth. We're talking about the our guest, our wonderful guest today, and subsequent adoption. It's a story not only of his search, but the story of a
Mm.
remarkable, strong, and focused woman. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes, I look forward to it. And without further ado, we're going to introduce our wonderful guest today, Ed Di Gangi. Hello, Ed. How are you?
I'm well, Evener. How are you today?
We're doing fantastic.
Hi,
We're
Marie.
Yeah. Hi, good to see you. Welcome to the
It's,
show.
thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
awesome, awesome. We were talking earlier about the weather. I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the home of the Black Wall Street, and Dr. Marie is in Massachusetts.
Mhm.
And what state are you located, Ed?
We are in North Carolina right now. I grew up in New York. I've lived in Texas, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. I think this is the last stop.
Mm, this is
Stop.
it.
Wow, wow. I wish I could say that. I wish I could say what last. Yeah, I think all the time about trying to move to the UK.
Mm,
Mm-hmm. You know why?
adventurous.
The accent.
Oh, really? Oh my goodness, that's it. The accent.
So like I like there are some celebrities like Simon Cowell and there's another girl from the Spice Girl.
Hmm, hmm.
And I love the accent, like because probably watch America's Got Talent too much. Be
The
like,
UK. Well,
you
it's in your
such
future.
you're such a horrible actor. You shouldn't be singing.
No, I'll
Oh
stick
my
to the
god.
northern. I'll stick to Massachusetts. We don't pronounce our R's here, so that would be too much for me. That UK accent. Get to the car.
Yes.
That's it.
See, I parked my car
Yep.
on my way to Starbucks.
Yep. Stop. We love
Yes,
it.
and sometimes I catch myself uh, with the Boston accent.
It slips. It happens.
But when you mix the Haitian accent with the New England accent, I don't know what you get.
No idea. It's a mystery. That's the mystery. And today's going to be all about that. The mystery to be solved. We're like, what is this language? So I
So
can't
how's
wait.
the weather like in your area, Ed?
We had a very nice day today. We get up into the mid 50s, but tonight it'll get down into the mid 20s.
Ooh.
So
Ooh,
we have cold nights, and when we're lucky, the days get pretty warm. The weather has been all over the map this
Yeah.
year, though.
awesome, awesome. Ed, I am very excited about uh, what you're gonna share with us today, and your story is something that I was reading last night and just reading like, oh my goodness, at 67 years of age, and no one in your family said that you were adopted.
Yeah, that's true. Nobody did tell me, and you mentioned that. I thought I had a vague recollection, and I was snooping through some papers when I was
Mhm.
a young child, and I found a piece of paper that indicated that I was adopted, but I never questioned it. I had a wonderful childhood. My parents were wonderful to me, so I just thought if they weren't telling me, I wasn't going to ask them.
Hmm.
And they both went to their graves never having said a word.
How did you feel when you first found out?
That's a very long time ago. That's one of the problems of being 73 now.
Mhm.
But it was a long time ago, and I'm sure there was, it had to be a little bit disorienting.
Mhm.
But yeah, by the same token, I think I digested it quite well and just, put it in the back of my mind, put the paper away, and went about my life.
And that has to take you a lot of courage to deep and search. I mean, I know some people will be like, oh, okay, I'm a man now. I'm an adult, so
Mhm.
it doesn't matter.
Well, it was a sense of curiosity that finally came over me. As I grew up, it was very infrequently that I wondered about who my birth mother might have been, and honestly gave very little thought whatsoever to who my birth father was.
Hmm.
Uh, but I'd occasionally think about it. I just made the assumption that so many adoptees. My birth mother had been a high school girl who inadvertently became pregnant. She had a baby. They took it away, and life went on, and she had kind of an ordinary life. And I was placed in a situation that was just, couldn't have been any better.
Mm.
But, when the time finally came, and there were a number of things that encouraged me, there are TV shows now that talk about this. There's DNA testing, which makes this all kind of mainstream. And then the computer databases where you could just go plug in a name and, you might, who knows what you find out.
Right.
So I had kind of a stirring event back in 2017. And it just got me curious. And I knew I had a piece of paper with my birth mother's name on it. And I got that name. I went to the library. I went to Ancestry.com, and this whole story began.
Wow. And in fact, as I was reading your story, and I was like, oh my goodness, how do I make this show a way to help people finding out, how to search for the birth parents? And I found this website, adoption.
Oh. You just type it in Google. You just go looking.
Just Google.
Oh, wow.
Well, I think there are two sides or two pieces to this story. Is one is how do you find out, and number two is just the differences between adoption experiences. I was very, very fortunate to have an extremely positive one. And there are many people out there who don't have the benefit of experiencing what I did. So I think there's a lot of understanding required to know that life is not the same for everybody who's been touched by adoption.
Mm.
Right.
That is true.
And I was greatly advantaged in that my adoption was privately arranged. So I had a piece of paper with my birth mother's name on it. So I had a starting place that really facilitated the entire journey.
So what made you decide to start writing about it?
It's interesting. I was, as I started to search, I got involved with one of our local libraries that had a memoir writing group that met once a month. And I thought it was just a good opportunity to capture some of what my journey was like. But then as I got deeper into it and discovered more and more and more about my birth mother and found out that she was not the high school girl who accidentally got pregnant, but had, but was a celebrity in her time, I started writing about that. And I had a friend who was also an author who was encouraging me. And I would tell him the stories and what I had just discovered. And he said, you really need to write a book. You need to write a book. And so I started writing. And, 350 pages later, here we are.
Wow.
Yes. It is. You shed a lot. That's a lot of pieces in there.
There was a great deal of information over the course of that journey.
I'm curious about the title, The Gift Best Given. And the title is very interesting. So why did you pick such a title?
There is a conversation midway through the book where my birth mother was befriended by a woman at the hospital where she ultimately gave birth to me. And my birth mother was faced with an issue. She could give birth to me and keep me. She could give birth to me and put me up for adoption, as she ultimately did. Or given the situation she was in, though it was illegal in New York City at the time, she had the option of aborting the pregnancy. And the conversation that she had with the woman who kind of assumed a maternal role in her life was, the woman basically said, you've been given a great gift. And my mother, Genevieve, said, I'm not quite sure what to do with a gift like this. And, this is not a gift I needed. And the woman basically said sometimes the greatest gift is the one that you gift to someone else.
Oh wow,
You know,
that's powerful.
yeah. So the thought there was, you've been gifted, but we talk about it today as regifting.
Mm.
So she went through with the pregnancy. She came from a very, very conservative Polish Roman Catholic family, and abortion was never an option for her. And she made the decision that I will go through the pregnancy. I'll then go through and I will see this baby adopted. And she was very, very determined that there were certain things that I, as her son, should have in terms of who adopted me.
Mm. Wow.
And this book, which originally just started as just tracing the journey, really turned into a tribute to my mother. She was a very, very remarkable woman in her time.
Do you know of any of her siblings, like any uncles and any aunts that you were able to make connections with?
Well, sadly, she had two sisters, both of whom were older, and she had an older brother, and none of the three were alive at the time that I searched for them. I have met cousins, first cousins. I've met my mother. My mother got married 7 years after my birth, and she had two sons. One of them is no longer alive, but I'm in close touch with the other of the sons. So that's my half brother on my mother's side, and that probably was the most significant piece of reunion.
The reunion part, that's the part that interests me. Is like you're here, you don't know if you're adopted, then all of a sudden the news came to you. You know what? You had a birth parents, and that
Yeah.
was a celebrity. In her time, it's like, oh my
Right.
goodness, wow. And you asking yourself and telling yourself, oh my goodness, I wish I knew that person. I mean, I can imagine how my life would be, and you're making all of these imaginations in your head, and I'm sure you had these thoughts as well. And like, oh my goodness, she was a celebrity, she was this and that, so I wish I knew her, I wish I met her, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I do wish I had met her, and she had passed away 3 years before I started my search. And honestly, the reason I wanted to meet her was to tell her she had done a good thing,
Mm-hmm.
and that what she had attempted to do had worked out for absolutely the best. Uh, the celebrity part was not nearly so important there.
Mm.
She lived every little girl's dream. She dreamt from the time she was a young child that she was going to be a professional ice skater.
Mm-hmm.
And at 17, she traveled alone across the country to pursue that dream. She lived it, and sadly, without going into a lot of details, by the end of her life, that kind of crumbled around her, and the end of her life was not a particularly happy time. But I would just like to have reassured her that you did a good thing, and what you wanted happened.
Wow. Yeah, I had that question too. I was thinking, what would you say to her? But the book is a beautiful tribute. But did you learn anything about yourself when you start that journey to after the book is finished? Like, what did you learn about you as a person, as a human being, discovering this new information about your identity?
Boy, it's a hard thing. I've pondered that. I'm not sure I'm a very different person today than I was when I started this. I certainly am enriched by what I've discovered. I think I've become a more tolerant and understanding person, in realizing that people find themselves in situations that they didn't expect to be in,
Mm-hmm.
and appreciative of the strength that some of those people apply to those situations to resolve them. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I look at my half brother. I hear my mother's story, and And I like to think I'm very sympathetic to those situations, and wish I could have and could do more. But there was a growing experience for sure. It's and just the research, it was a story of persistence, because there were many times when it just seemed like I had hit a dead end.
Mm.
And it was okay, I'm just going to push a little bit farther and see, and then a door would open up, and now I'm onto a different avenue.
Wow, 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 wow. So, do you have any advice for someone who think they might be adopted and who wants to start doing a search to find out, who their birth parents are?
Well, I could tell you about the mechanics of that. I think the first piece of advice, though, is if there is anybody in the world to ask,
Hmm.
you know, don't be afraid. Go out and ask them. As I said, I never asked my parents, and it wasn't because I was fearful, I don't think. Um, it was just well, maybe I was fearful. I didn't want to upset them. They gave me
Mm.
everything they had,
Right.
and I just didn't want to be perceived as being ungrateful. And I remain terribly grateful today. The book is dedicated to my adoptive parents, and but my suggestion is, if there is somebody around to ask a question of, go ask the question. We always hear that there are no stupid questions.
Right.
This is a prime example. After my book was published, I heard from two of my first cousins who came back to me and said, "Boy, we are so sorry. We always knew you were adopted, but our
Mm.
parents said not to say anything."
Oh.
So, I mean,
Wow.
people knew and could have told me more. I had another first cousin, and I mentioned her in the book, and she was part of helping me validate my own story, my own discoveries, and giving me a little bit more information. But I finally called her one day, and she was the cousin closest to my adoptive parents. And I said, "Anne, what do you know about my adoption?" And I expected her to slam down the phone because the words had never been spoken before.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
she only said two things. She said, "My mother went to pick you up at the hospital with your parents, and I know your mother was an ice skater."
Hmm.
Wow.
And that, the ice skating part validated what I thought I knew, but that certainly solidified it. A couple of weeks later, she called me back, and she said, "And I just thought of it, you were named after so and so because he
Hmm.
helped arrange your adoption." And that's when all the pieces of, how did my
Awesome.
birth mother and how did my adoptive parents come to be in the same place around me. And again, I could have asked those questions 20 years ago,
Hmm.
but
So,
ask the questions, and then you can start with the mechanics of the
absolutely.
Yeah.
process.
You're about to say something, Dr. Murray.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be ready. I think sometimes we think there's a timing for everything, and there's a timing, right? I think as I was seeing, your age and when it came up, and sometimes people ask, why now, right? And you have to think like this was the right time for you to know, right? And I think when you think of all your book feels like a mystery movie to me. So I'm like, when you think of all the characters, I'm like, in a way, I think many thought they were protecting you, right? Like, how would you have handled that as a child, for example? And where you are now, it's very different than, let's say, if you find out 3 years before she passed away, or even earlier than that. Like, how would that affected you as a person based on what your life was like then? Um, and so, in a way, the timing is the timing, right? It is what it is, and to be able to see it. Do you think this was the right time to find out?
I
What do you
think,
think?
yes, it was. I'm a firm believer in everything happens when it's supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I was talking with my half brother early on in our relationship, and I said that. I said, "I just always believe that everything happens for a reason." And he said, "What did you say?" I said everything happens for a reason. He
For a
said, that's what
reason.
my mother always said.
Oh,
And that's not an uncommon thing to say, but
Mhm.
again, it's something that sort of connected us a little
yeah.
bit. And my father had been dead for, oh, I don't know, he passed away in 1976, so it's over 40 years.
40. Yeah.
And my mother had been deceased for 30. So it wasn't a matter of, not wanting to upset them. It just finally came to, the point of this is a good time to do it if I'm ever going to find out.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to remind the viewer the book by Edward Di Gangi, uh, The Gift Best Given. Uh, the memoir is available on Amazon. Is and I read a little bit of you know in the book. It's very heartwarming, and there's a lot of suspense in it. So your story could be a movie. Have you
Yes.
had anybody approach you about turning that into a movie?
No, I'm still waiting for Oprah to call.
Or
Oh, he's
Tyler
an
Perry?
easy. Yes.
A number of people have had that reaction. No, they've
Yeah.
read the book and they come back and they say, this should be a movie.
Mhm.
And I would love nothing more, as I think, again, as a tribute to my mother. I think she was a remarkable woman, and it was all set against a very, very glamorous background.
Right.
The ice shows of the 1940s and even the 1950s were major events. And, and that touring was a big thing for people. There's still a major social media community out there
Mhm,
remaining in touch. And it's been great to reach out to some of those people who knew my mother that long ago.
mhm.
And, to hear some of the responses and the impressions they had.
What do you think she would say about the book if she's still here?
I I hope she would tell me that my parts about ice skating per se were accurate, and and that I read her family situation correctly, and I believe that I did. And I think, given the kind of person I've heard that she would probably have said, you were too good to me, you're too kind, you
Yeah.
made me sound too good. But I'm not sure that's the case. If I came away from anything out of this experience thinking about adoption, it's appreciation for women who surrender children for adoption.
Mhm.
That's not something you do today and then forget about it.
Mhm.
I have no doubt, but she carried that to the grave with her.
I think she would say, "Son, you are truly a gift."
And that would be a wonderful thing. That would bring me to tears.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yes, I think she would say you are truly a gift. It's a gift that I had to give
Mhm.
because that's what it is. Gift to
Mhm.
give, right?
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, she made a terribly difficult decision, as I've said it. I think all in all, it worked out for the best.
Just like you just said earlier, everything happens for a reason.
It does. It
So,
does.
so the reason she gave you away is to give someone else joy because your adopted parents, you give them plenty of joy.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah, I think, certainly had they been around, I would love for them to have met her.
Hmm.
You know, I think, her reason for giving me away was to make sure that I had better than she could give me at that time. You know,
Absolutely.
she would have been a single mother in an environment where people didn't approve.
Mhm.
That was a very different time than it is today. Or a mother who put me in a knapsack and carried me around city to city, with the ice shows. And I've heard from some people who lived that life. Sometimes talk about, people run away and they join the circus. And, it would have been kind of a lifestyle like that. And I don't think that's what she wanted. And she returned and she had a very, very significant career after my birth. So it worked out for all of us.
If somebody would like to contact you, either for an interview like this about your book, to come and speak, how can they get in touch with you?
Probably the easiest way is via my, excuse me, by email,
Mhm.
and it's Edward dot Di Gangi, Dig like George, N like Nancy, Gi dot author at gmail.com. I also have a website, and they could contact me through there, and that's at www.digangiauthor.com. And you mentioned that the book is available on Amazon.
Yes.
I also have it available on the website. I'm trying to find a place to show it. And I would be happy to personalize it and autograph it and send it out to anybody who's interested. This picture, if you have a moment, is a kind of an interesting part of the reunion story.
Mhm.
When I made contact with my maternal half brother, it took him a great deal of time to really accept the fact that his mother was my mother. And his first reaction is, my mama would have told me.
Mhm.
And I kept saying, I don't think so. It's just not the type of thing a mother shares with her son. And we eventually met. We traveled to Georgia to meet him where he lives. And we had a discussion. He kept on saying, I don't understand what kind of kin you are. And I would repeat that you and I have the same mother. We had different fathers. And he eventually pulled out. He said, my mother and my father were always together. They always ice skated together.
Mhm.
And I knew for a fact that was not the case. Both of them were ice skaters, but their careers didn't come together until after I was born.
Mm.
But to show me what he thought was the case, he brought out a big photograph album. And my birth mother had done a meticulous job of recording her career from the time she left home through the duration of her career via these little 3 by 3 inch brownie Kodak snapshots.
Mhm.
And each one was carefully labeled with a place and with the date and who might have been in the picture. And I knew I was conceived in San Francisco in 1947. I knew where she was. I just counted back the date from my birth, my birth. And he brought out the book, and we went through, and he got up to about 1946,
Mhm.
and he was about to turn the page. And I said, Ted, I said, when you turn that page, if I'm right, there's going to be a picture of her in San Francisco in 1947. And
Mm.
he sort of looked at me, and again, this is an album full of black and white snapshots. He turned that page, and this photograph showed up, which is labeled San Francisco, California, August 1947.
Oh my God.
And it was the only color photograph in the entire album.
Oh
And
wow.
he sort of looked at it, and I wanted to say, I told you so. But I kind of bit my tongue, and he just folded the album up, and he took it and he put it away, and he came back and he said, would you like a beer? And and that was the beginning of his finally coming to accept what had really occurred.
Mhm.
Awesome. Awesome.
But that was just a lightning bolt kind of discovery. I didn't expect that.
Mm.
So what's the next project you're working on now, Ed?
Well, my mother had a career, as I said, after I was born.
Mhm.
I was born in May. She returned to touring in October of the same year.
Mhm.
She wound up in South America for 6 months the following spring. She toured Europe the year after that. Uh, and again, never told anybody. The only people in her family who knew were her older sister and her sister's husband.
Mhm.
And I had asked the cousins, I said, did anybody know? And everybody shook their head and said, there's no way in our family, if one person knew, everybody would have known.
Mhm.
So she came back for a family reunion in 1962. And I'm in the process of writing about what occurred in her life between the time she gave birth to me in 1962, both from the standpoint of where she was and what she did, but also from the standpoint of a woman who dealt with the fact that she had given a baby up and now was dealing with, the emotional baggage that continues to go along with that.
Mm.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Awesome, awesome, man. Powerful, very powerful
Yes.
story. And it was great having you on our show today and your story. And I hope it's not only just a read, it will also inspire someone to just actually pick up the book. Whether you were adopted or not, this type of story is also a love story.
Mm.
It's also a love story when you think about it, because anything that has to do with a child growing up and especially not knowing their birth parents, and I'm sure after you discovered after you searched that you were adopted, even if you did not know them, but what you learn about them, you started developing some appreciation for who they are.
Right.
So that's why I said this is a little bit like a love story as well.
It's a big love story. I think this story is really wrapped up in love.
Yes.
And I hadn't thought about it that way, but you know, the, I could not have appreciated my adoptive parents
Hmm.
any more than I did. And again, I would like to have held my birth mother's hand or maybe hugged her
Hmm.
and told her I loved her too for what she did. She was a brave, brave woman. And she did what she thought was right, and it worked out quite nicely.
Awesome. And I just wanted to let my audience know if you're searching for your birth parents, and there are resources available for you to
Mhm.
find them. You can go to adoption.org and start searching. And of course, if you are searching for your adopted son, uh, this website is for your adopted son and daughter. You can go to adopted.com. These are resources available, and I'm sure you probably looking in one of these websites, Ed, as far as beside 123. What is it? 123 me.
Oh yeah, one, two, three.
23 and me.
23 and me. Yeah.
123. Yes.
Actually, I did a DNA sample,
Mm-hmm.
which was kind of separate from the search I embarked on. All I wanted to know is what my ethnicity was.
Mm.
And through that DNA sample, I discovered a paternal half brother, and I discovered the identity of who my father had been.
Oh my.
So, it was the gift that kept on giving.
Right. Wow.
So, yeah, there are lots of resources out there. Be careful with DNA if you're not ready for a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you're buckled in and ready, because a lot of people have surprises. Some, like mine, were very welcomed. Some are totally unwelcomed.
Mm.
And there are lots of social media groups out there, Facebook in
Mm-hmm.
particular, who will help people who are researching their adoption. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, going back to what I said early on, there are some extremely happy adoption stories, such as mine. There are a lot of folks who are, they're kind of scarred by adoption
Mhm.
and working through what they've discovered or what they don't yet know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to a movie.
Yes, on the screen. It has to
Yeah,
be.
I am
I
Such a
looking forward to that.
mystery.
Yes, spread the word. I'd love nothing better.
Whatever you can do and whatever we can do as far as getting the word out there, because that story should be on screen.
Mhm.
That's so kind of you.
Yeah,
Yes,
and that would
yes.
allow other people to share their stories. I think a lot of people are and they live in silence because of the hurt. It might be anger, but even if it's that love, right? I think it's worth sharing and allowing others to also share their own story. But now it's part of your family legacy, part of her legacy, which we would have
Right.
never known about
Right.
if you didn't write the book. So that's
Nice.
even more beautiful.
I would say no matter who you are, take a deep breath and share the story.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much, Ed. It's been wonderful meeting you and learn about you, your story, and how it can warm up the heart of people, whether you're adopted or not. And thank you also, my co-host, Dr. Marie.
Thank
And
you.
you've been so wonderful. And Ed, you've been so wonderful in some of those questions and getting people to know you more. So I can say, after this last 30 minutes, I know more about you.
It's been a privilege to be with both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much. You have a wonderful evening.
You do the
Thank you.
same. Thank
Thank
you.
you to everybody in the chat. I see you all with your questions and comments.
I know.
So to each one of you.
So many questions. Thank you so much, everyone who've been watching us on YouTube, Facebook mostly,
Mm-hmm.
and Twitter and LinkedIn,
Twitter, Twitch,
Twitch. Please,
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. I always forget LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Please share the live and subscribe to our channel. And this is how we can be encouraged to bring more content, to bring more wonderful storytellers like Ed Di Gangi to tell a story, because we believe in storytelling.
Oh yeah, it's
And I
beautiful.
believe storytelling can really change so many things in our world. And storytelling can, that's a great way to educate and teach people as well.
Mm-hmm. You're not asking a big question tonight?
Yes, I really have you ask the big question.
Me asking. You have the
Yeah,
question.
you asked the big question, Dr. Marie.
Your big question. Is it the
Yes,
one? Well, the big question is always to everyone, Ed, and you're not gonna escape that one. Is it how do we heal the world?
yes.
Ed
I
is
would,
like,
s- I would say you heal it with kindness. Just be nice to the people around you.
mm,
You know, one day I'm gonna make a survey. So far, 95% of people answer the same thing: kindness, love,
oh,
empathy. You answered it well.
It's the one
Kindness.
thing you can control. That's one thing that's in your hands.
mm,
Yes. And kindness, you cannot legislate love and kindness. It's a decision that you have to make to treat others kindly
It's out of the
with
heart.
love and empathy.
mhm. And those are beautiful gifts to share with others.
We can
Yeah.
give. That's another gift that we can give. All right. Thank you, everyone. You've
Thank
been
you.
watching the Human Energy Show with Yvette Dorso, your host, and my good friend, Dr. Maurice Celestin, my co host, and our wonderful guest, Ed Di Gangi, the author of the book, The Best, The Gift Best Given.
Yes.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Good night.